Astute viewers may note that I already made a video on Gundam Build Fighters in 2014, but the special statute of limitations on getting butt-rammed by copyright claims wasn't quite up. Now, it is. So let's try this once more with feeling. When Gundam Wing came out in the States around the turn of the century, it was something of a revelation to me. The characters had depth, the plot moved forward, and the combat was pretty cool. The robots were extremely distinct and fulfilled different roles in battle, and while the plot got wafer thin in parts, the whole product was pretty solid. Hasn't aged well, but that's beside the point. Not too long afterwards, I picked up my first Warhammer 40,000 kit and got right into the whole plastic crack hobby. I could have gotten into Gunpla at the same time, but that didn't really hit until more recently. A couple of years ago, I rewatched Angelic Layer for like the 8th time, and I was simultaneously like, why don't more dudes play this game in the show? And this would be way cooler if they were Gundams. I didn't think too much more of it from there until, hallelujah, praise the Lord, 2013 came around, and Gundam Build Fighters got dropped in my lap. It's like they sucked the idea right out of my brain via satellite and then never told me. So it is worth mentioning that, unlike the predecessor, Gunpla Builders Beginning G, the series here does a lot more than exist as a 22-minute toy commercial. Not that it isn't a toy commercial at its core, of course, but at the same time the series builds its own world, builds its own lore, and has characters worth caring about over the course of a 25-episode run. Our main hero is one Sei Iori, a boy, and I mean boy, who loves him some Gunpla. He knows the Gundamverse inside and out, he can build Gunpla like none other, and his family even runs a Gunpla store. His dad was the Gunpla champion when Sei was just a little tyke, and it had an effect on him that will ruin him for the rest of his days by getting him into the plastic crack habit. The problem is, while his Gunpla are great and his designs are top-notch, he sucks at battling. And I don't mean he's not very good at it, I mean he sucks. He needs someone to pilot for him, desperately. Enter Reiji from outta nowhere! Not specifically out of nowhere, but it certainly seems like he's from out of this world. Reiji, for all his weirdness, is one of the only people around who can handle the quality and power of Sei's Gunpla, and thank goodness for it, or we wouldn't have much of a show. Reiji makes a save, Sei feels vindicated, and there's one broken Gyan to show for it. So it should be noted that Sei uses a variant of the Strike Gundam, which is an interesting choice considering the director was responsible for Gundam 00. But you know, removing the Strike Gundam from Seed and its obnoxiously godlike pilot shows a certain strength and vulnerability to the machine. The Strike in the original show was kind of a non-starter for a specialist machine, since all the other units created for that series looked a whole lot cooler, or more ridiculous depending on your position. However, the Strike is just generic looking enough to look like the underdog, and simple enough to manage getting heavily customized without really compromising the design too much. Overall, it is a nice cross between heroic and looking like the underdog in a lot of these matches against the more built-up mobile suits. Luckily, there's also not a whole ton of Seed stuff otherwise in this show, at least not terribly front and center. What is front and center is that, of all people, Sei has Ramba Ral providing color commentary and backup for him. Gundam Build Fighters is more than a little goofy. Since Sei's daddy is out of the picture, Ramba Ral is trying to move in on Rinko Iori, his hot mom. And can you blame the guy? I mean, goddamn. I think she and Aki Hinata must have a common ancestor. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, sensibly because she's 14 years old, there's China Kosaka. She's into Sei, very, very obviously head over heels for him. Ladies, get you a man who looks at you like Sei Iori looks at Gunpla. Now that Sei has a pilot for his custom mobile suit, he can finally throw himself at the tournament scene. There he has some pretty stiff competition from a number of players like Tata Yuki, the president of the Gunpla Battle Club. And unlike Sei, he can build and battle all by himself. Most of the players can do this, which kind of sets Sei apart. Yuki is their classmate, but Sei and Reiji's school nonsense only lasts for a few episodes, and thank God for it, because I think I'd probably have imploded into a sentient ball of hatred had it gone full slice of life. That being said, Tatsuya Yuki is the next big character, and by all appearances, he's out of the series by episode 6. In his place stands the Meijin Kawaguchi, a master Gunpla builder and fighter who wears sunglasses and, well, in true Gundam fashion, he thinks he can hide his identity with a doofy pair of sunshades. Nice try, Tatsuya. We've seen this trick before, and it only worked for Char. The idea of the Meijin is an interesting concept as a sponsored player who sets the pace of the game, which is generally known as the meta in gaming circles. Tatsuya studied under the previous Meijin and determined he was going to change it, which invites more conflict in later episodes. The Meijin feels he has to win the tournament to fix what's broken in the game, and Sei and Reiji just kind of want to win because they want to win. So because Sei and Reiji have such a killer combination going on, they end up in the World Tournament almost instantly. This is great for them, of course, but it also seems to be a bit of a bump in player rank. They address this in the sequel series, but more on that later. Once they get to the World Finals, they encounter some incredibly stiff competition, such as Liang Dulara from Thailand and the Argentinian brothers with the GMK9. Primary among them is Ricardo Fellini, the Italian dandy, who pilots a modified wing Gundam. And as a longtime Gundam wing fan, this makes my black little heart swoon. He's a world-class pilot and is rivals with the former U.S. champion, Greco Logan, who pilots a Tallgeese variant, fittingly enough. It's like they know! Fellini also likes to put the moves on anything with two legs, which runs him afoul of the Gunpla idol Kirara. What an awful character design. Look at his cotton candy abomination. Worse yet, she's a dirty fighter, and almost eliminates Sei and Reiji in an early match. Huh. What the hell does she look like without all this candy floss shit on? God damn it. Fuck off, I ain't proud. The next competitor is Maui Osaka, a country bumpkin who pilots the Gundam X Mao, and is the heir apparent to the Gunpla Shingyo school. This allows him to manipulate the board in some screwball way, but given the context of the series, it works just fine. The Gunpla already runs on what amounts to magic, so honestly it's no big deal if you're still with the show at this point. His Gundam X is brutal on the field, able to strike down mobile armors easily, and able to play out battles in his head with alarming accuracy. On the opposite end of the spectrum is Nils Nielsen, an American super genius who is more out for the science of the Plavsky particle than winning. His Sengoku Astray carries no beam weapons and relies on the same kind of field manipulation tricks that Mao does. Sadly, they never get to fight, but the battle he has with Sei and Reiji is one of the most brutal and chilling fights the show has to offer. Finally, the last noteworthy competitor is Ayla Jyrkiäinen, who fights from Finland. If I just say she's for Murasame by way of Alan B. Beardsley, most of the Gundam fans out there will get the joke. But if you're someone who considers themselves fairly well-balanced, that might go over your head. She and Reiji end up having a sort of weird romance that never goes anywhere specifically, but you can put it together. She also eats like a goddamn vacuum cleaner, which makes me think that being a Gundam fighter must burn a lot of calories. Holy crap, lady. So in the background of all this is Chairman Mazda, who seems to have a real bonk on for getting Reiji eliminated for reasons that will become obvious later. He likes to jump in the middle of his tournament and screw with the players just for the sake of ratings or his own sense of fun, because he has about as much sense as a 5-year-old playing with a bunch of toys. Good thing he's not the one making actual decisions for the company, else it never would have gotten off the ground. He's responsible for the introduction of the Plavsky particle in the first place, which makes any of this even possible. And true to Gundam form, there's a lot more to this whole thing than just battling. Beyond that, your core team of fighters is pretty straightforward, and they all love to beat each other to a bloody pulp. This is not the sort of fight you'd expect from something trying to sell toys, either. These fighters are out for blood, in some of the most knockdown, drag-out fights ever put to digital, featuring 2 tiny plastic model kits. Limbs get sliced off, parts go flying, Gunpla models get blown to splinters in ways that would make Sergeant Frog squirt himself. The fights themselves only need pilot suits to make you completely forget that they're not actually in these robots. I've played these sort of competitive games and you definitely don't feel any risk at all, so having amped up the stakes here gives it the extra edge. You are going to see some shit in this series, man. The music ties into the energy as well, and it's damn near Star Wars levels of musical attunement. You know that feeling you get at the climax of a series when the main theme starts playing and you get all those little chills? That happens with multiple pieces of music at multiple points in the show, and you know it's got to be good because I never talk about music. So I watch a lot of bad anime for this show, shows that don't understand pacing or plot development, and I am pleased to inform you that this is not the case with Build Fighters. The show understands what it needs to give adequate characterization and proper pacing to make a good run of it. And considering that, like most robot shows, it is a 22-minute toy commercial, this is pretty novel. Pacing is something that a lot of shows trip over, and you really only know if you did it right when you actually do it right, which is perhaps an easy statement to make. But at the same point, with how difficult it seems to be, I don't feel like it's specifically wrong either. Build Fighters takes the time and does the work to make it feel like it should. The show looks gorgeous too, and I'm happy to report that they actually animated the Gundam fights instead of doing that stupid CG robot bullshit. I know it probably saves money and all, but it always looks better just to put in the work. And I know that that is an issue in the Japanese market because there's not a whole lot of money to go around and a whole lot of crap that needs to get animated, but if you do the diligence, you put the budget towards it, and you do the work, you will come out with a good product. All the characters are distinct and different, and no one would mistake one for the other. The colors are vibrant, nothing merges together or gets muddied, and everyone is so distinct and visually engaging, makes you wonder why more shows don't do that. Plus, and this is a rare one, Nils Nielsen is half African-American, half Japanese. Considering your typical American character is some blonde, super tall meathead, Nils stands out in comparison. But alas, let's talk about what went wrong here. So while I'm kind of the guy who can reasonably tell you what series a given mobile suit is from, and I get the jokes without batting an eye, you may not if you're a well-balanced human being. Also, this is really not a Gundam show, it's more like a sports show. If you're not about these sorts of shows, well, then you're really not going to get the full depth of it. This show is a weird intersection to hit, to be both good for robot fans and good for sports fans. Also, for a show that plays it pretty close to the real like Gundam does, the Plavsky particle, being basically magic, is a pretty hard left turn. And yes, I'm saying that knowing full well that new types are psychic robot pilots. And finally, let's talk about the dub. When I heard that there was going to be a dub of Gundam Build Fighters, I got really excited. I just didn't know the direction that Nozomi Entertainment would take with it. Here's the thing. This is the broadcast dub that they did in what I'm led to believe is Singapore. It's perfectly workable, but it's very clear that this is a straight dub. And by this I mean that they just got as much of the translated line in as they could, acting or beats be damned. It's about on the level of something you'd see on TV in the early 2000s, and while it's not exactly top-notch, it's not terrible either. The main characters with big speaking roles are going to sound the best and the most consistent. The incidental characters are going to sound like hot garbage. Sad but true. Given that this is probably a broadcast dub from another country, I'll give it a pass, though I would have liked to see an American dub of it done. Setting all that aside, the show has a whole lot of balls in the air and it manages to juggle them fairly well. It's got a sort of strange purity to it, in that it wants to encourage playing for the love of the game, and it kind of pulls that whole angelic layer thing again. It's simple, but effective. It's more than just a story about winning, or about loving your hobbies. It's a story about people coming together and sharing in something special to them. If you're not a Gundam fan, this is something you may dodge, but if you love Gundam as much as I do, you have no reason not to see it. You know, for something that came basically out of nowhere, I'd have to say that Gundam Build Fighters was a resounding success, both for me personally and for Bandai, because it helped them launch a whole new series of Gunpla kits. And, well, after what happened at the end of the series, which I won't talk about because it's hush-hush, I was chomping at the bit for more, and I really, really wanted it. And lucky for me, I got it in the second series, Gundam Build Fighters Try, also available from Nozomi Entertainment. So, needless to say, I'm quite a big fan of Gundam Build Fighters, but the only question that really remains is, does Try hold up to the first? Well, we're going to find out next time.
Please set your GP base.